If you want to know more about what went on in the air war during World War II, then you must read my book. The book is called A Raid Over Berlin. It can be found in all the shops, and I hope you'll buy it. Here is a picture of me during the war. You'll notice I'm smoking a pipe, which was the fashion in those days.
It is an honor to meet you. Thank you for this opportunity. Could you please go ahead and introduce yourself, sir? Just say hello and your full name.
Hello, my name's John Martin, and I was in the RAF in the wartime for something like 4.5 years, I think. And I was recruited actually as a pilot. And then we were in class, and somebody came in, a high-ranking officer, and said, the whole entry, we want you as bomb aimers, because we're short of bomb aimers. I all the while thought I was going in as a wireless operator. So I don't know where I got the courage from, but I sat up and faced this officer and said, well, why can't I be a wireless operator like I really wanted to be? Well, if that's what you really want, I'll have to check up on this. And he was gone in about 3 or 4 hours, and he came back and said, yes, that'll be all right. You'll be leaving for Blackpool in a week or something, which is how I become a wireless operator. But I say, I really went in for training as a pilot. Now, I wasn't to know that at that point that this would save my life, because the pilot was killed, as well as the navigator and the bomb aimer and the rear gunner. So there were only 3 of us survived from a crew of 7. And I think both David, the bomb aimer, who came out with me, was actually blown out, as I was blown out. I don't know if he's still alive now, but he would certainly agree how lucky we were to be standing under the glass bit of the cockpit, where structurally it wasn't quite so strong. So we were blown straight out through that, and we had similar injuries, head injuries and knees and that. So I think we must have gone out more or less exactly in the same manner with the bomb. Now, what I wasn't really aware of then, because you might know already that the wireless operator in any British bomber during the war was isolated from the rest of the crew. He couldn't speak to them or vice versa, and we didn't want anybody speaking to us because we might be taking a very important message. So that's how it was. It was all very lucky, and I was standing, say, in the right position along with the engineer, and next thing I know, boom, I was out in the open. And I didn't realise how near I was to the ground then, but it probably would only be 500 feet, something like that, because I was in the air only a very short time. And I landed, luckily, just outside Berlin on a field, and being part of a farm, I suppose. But I couldn't get my parachute off, and I was being carried across this field, dragging along after the parachute. But eventually it collapsed itself, and I was able to unhook it. And I thought, what am I going to do with this thing now? And I remember seeing a film about the wartime, somebody hiding their parachute in a haystack. So I was looking across and I saw just a haystack, and I thought, that's what I do. And I pushed my chute in there and the harness with it, and thought, now I've got to get as far away from here as I possibly can if I stand any chance of getting away with it. And this had all been taught to us previously during the training, what things to do. But anyway, I thought, yes, I'm all right, I'll get away now. But unknowingly, I stepped out onto the main road. And then there was these two guys there with rifles and bayonets trained on me. And they didn't fire, thank goodness. But they took me across to a hut, which was obviously a searchlight unit. And actually they were very kind to me. They immediately sent for a medical man, and you weren't allowed to ask where David was or anything like that, you know, although I thought he stood a good chance of getting out. But you don't ask about any of your crew because they don't want you to know anything about them. But anyway, they sent for this medical man, and he dressed my injuries and had my head done up with a bandage, and both my legs below the knee were badly, and he spent knowing the time probing about around here, and I only realised what he was doing. He thought I'd been hit with shrapnel, but actually it was the aircraft, the wrecking of the aircraft that had done these injuries to my legs, although I didn't know that at the time. But he was kept pressing all over my legs, feeling for shrapnel there. But I can't say, I will emphasise that they were very, very kind to me. And
you're doing great, but before we get into the whole story of when you were shot down, because that's a whole, it's a whole episode, I just want to go back a little bit to how you got there, if that's okay. I'm just going to ask you some earlier questions first, before we get into the whole story.
Yes. Well, I was one of a family of 6 children, and the mother and father, and I lived in northwest London, and at the time my old grandmother, my mother's mother, it would be, was living in one of the rooms of and she kept complaining about her poor legs. She couldn't do anything about her poor legs. But this night, this is before I joined the Air Force, called German bombers came over and they had a direct hit on a house just on the opposite side of the road. And this blew all our windows out, and we knew we'd got to get out into the shelter where we should have been in the first place. But anyway, I thought, I've got to get Granny down with her bad legs. So I went to start to go up the stairs, and suddenly, whoosh, she'd gone by me just like that. And she was out of that door and across the road, and in the shelters before I knew what was happening. So, which was a good thing, really, but she always claimed that her poor legs, she couldn't do anything with her poor legs.
What was the reason you weren't in the shelter in the first place?
These shelters were built straight onto the road. They were brick built, but everybody criticised them when they were being built, saying, well, what good is that, you know? But they were built straight onto the surface of the road, and consequently, there were several bombs dropped close to them, and they just moved along with us inside. But no doubt they'd done the job, what they were intended to do.
Could you please tell us, before the war broke out, what was your plan? What was your dream? What were you doing? What were you hoping to do with your life?
I was in the coach building industry, building the bodies for vehicles. The chassis came whole. We didn't have anything to do with the mechanical side, but we built bodies to whatever the customer wanted on them. Quite interesting, and I never thought that I'd gone into the wrong trade or anything like that, except when war broke out. I wanted to be in the Air Force then, and I did actually try to get in the ground staff. And I don't know how the boss got to hear about it. Somebody must have told him where I was. Next thing, he appears in the recruiting office, has a few words with some people in there, and I'm out. Because it's we're not allowed to leave the job, you see, because it was essential industry. So I thought, well, that's not it. But then, next thing I know, whenever they were looking for aircrew, they had put an advert in the paper, in the newspaper, and it always said that it got to have a first-class education. But because this ruled me out, because I left school when I was 14 years of age, I left on the Friday afternoon about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 8 o'clock on the next Monday morning, I was working in the coach builders. So I didn't have time to argue with anybody. My mother was short of money all the time, like everybody else at that time in life. And she wanted me in the job, and I wanted to be in the Air Force. But anyway, this went on for, I did another couple of years in that job, and what we were doing mainly were taking big American cars, stripping the back of the bodies off and putting an ambulance body there. And we did, I don't know how many we built, must have been 100 of them before I left. But then I kept my eye on the newspaper advertisements for people needed for the Air Force, and I noticed then that they wanted aircrew, but there was no mention of having to have a first-class education. Off I go back to the recruiting office, and yes, I was all right. And first thing I did really about getting in was going to a centre where you were interviewed by 4 group captains in a line, and each one of them had got their own questions they were going to ask me. And they said, well, we don't know about being a wild, so we think you make a very good pilot. So I thought, oh, very good. So I did set out to be a pilot. But then, as I say, sometime during the training, high-ranking officer come in and said, "We now want you to be bomb aimers." And I didn't want to be a bomb aimer. So I said, "Why can't I be a wireless operator?" He had to think about this. He said, "I'll find out." He came back, took him several hours to find out. He said, "Yes, you can be a wireless operator, and the course is ready to start now in Blackpool. I've got to get you up there." And that's how I became a wireless operator. But the training, as it goes, you're trained as a ground operator to start with, and then the air operating course, where you start flying, and it's quite a separate thing. But what they do, they send you out after the ground course to get a bit of experience, as they say. But the place they sent me to, they didn't have anything to do with wireless operators at all. It was a fighter squadron, and they always used the, I forget what they called it now, but it was the, well, they could talk to the ground, but it was all done by microphone rather than the Morse key. So, yes, that was all right, but the next thing, they must have realised they were short of wireless operators, and I wasn't there very long before out. I was into the wireless operating course. And the CO of the unit I was sent to, he had me and he said, "Now, do you really want to go into this air crew?" He said, "It's bloody dangerous, you know." And that was his words. And I said, "Yes, no, so I want to be an air crew." "All right, well, very good luck to you then. So you'll be off in a couple of days." And that's when I was sent to London to be interviewed as a pilot, which I did all right. I was passing all right. But then I said, I've already said this before, that we were suddenly wanted to be bomb aimers. The higher ups wanted us to be bomb aimers, but I still wanted to be a wireless operator, so I went.
So before we continue, because we have that part of the story, you've done this perfectly. I just have a couple questions about your early life. Could you please tell us the story, how you heard about the war breaking out? On the radio.
Oh, yes,
Could
yes.
you tell us that story, please?
Yeah. Well, it was on a Sunday morning, and we knew there was a chance that there would be the war would be breaking out, but the older people who had been in the last war, the 1418 war, they were all saying, "Oh, I hope there's no more war, I hope there's not another war." But us young people were saying, "Let's have another war." We didn't know what we were talking about, really. But we were in favour of another war. And because we thought we could get into be a fighter pilot or something like that. But anyway,
so you, how did you hear? Was it on the radio that it was? Do you remember what you were doing when it actually was broadcasted? When Chamberlain came on?
Yes, I was sitting listening to the wireless. No televisions, of course, in those days. Sitting listening to the wireless, and suddenly it stopped and said that we were at war with Germany. We're now at war with Germany. He gave about a quarter of an hour's speech about what we've got to do and all that. And but then I thought, oh, good, the war's going now. And so nothing happened at all.
What about the first air raid?
Well, the first air activity I saw was, it was on a Saturday afternoon, and these ME-109s come over, Messerschmitt 109s come over, and they were going from balloon barrage to balloon barrage, shooting it down. And there was no fighters in the air, fighters in the air at all. There were just these German fighters going around, shooting them down at lib. No opposition whatsoever. And I thought, that seems a bit queer, but there you are. That's what it was, and that's how it happened. And there seemed to be quite a stalemate before the action really got it on. But it was really started with the German bombing of the cities. And it was pretty nasty, you know, in the Blitz. As it soon got to be called the Blitz, yeah.
Could you please tell us about some of your memories in the Blitz with the German air raids?
Yes, well, we everybody had the idea we wouldn't be hit, sort of thing, you know. But this night, well, every night the Germans came over, and they actually bombed the house directly opposite to where we lived, and it blew our windows out, it blew the front door off, and this is when we come to the bit about Grandma not being able to walk, and she shot down the hallway and out of the door in no time at all. She was in the shelter long before I was.
So besides that incident with your grandmother, what were some of the other incidents that stick out in your mind with the German air raids? Were there any other incidents?
Well, no, we got, as I say, our windows knocked out and we suffered other damage as well that. And you can say it was pretty widespread damage all over London where I was about it. But one thing I do remember is we had Saturday afternoons in the job, and I used to get on a bus and go into central London and just to look at the bomb damage. What a wicked thing to do, but there you are.
Could you describe what did the damage look like?
Oh yeah, the damage. Oh yes, I thought it was much worse than what I thought it would be, and plenty of buildings completely down to the ground, and the buildings close to were damaged, of course. And I'll tell you a funny little story about the Blitz. It was the time I was working, and always the air raid wardens came round and said, take cover, take cover. And they dropped a bomb within, 100 yards of where we worked. And it actually demolished a small hotel that was on the corner of the building, the corner of some roads. And they completely demolished that. But next door was a house, and it was in a dangerous condition. So the wardens came round, and for the first time, they were going to use the explosives to blow this house down, rather than the army, who had always done it, always been in charge of the explosives. So anyway, they said, take cover, we're going to blow it up. We heard this great big bang, this explosion, and all bits came off the roof. So we dashed outside to see, expecting to see this building down flat on the ground. But no, it was absolutely as it was. So I said, okay, we'll try again. All back in the air raid shelters. Boom! Went outside, and there was this building still standing, but they'd blown the house down next door, which they didn't intend to do at all. But the one that they wanted was standing there. So, no, it all sounds very funny now, but it wasn't very funny for the people living in the house that got blown down accidentally. And But that was only a small part of the Blitz, of course. And
can you tell us about the blackout conditions? What was life like living with...
Oh, well, that took a bit of getting used to. The blackout conditions were very, what shall I say, very hard to follow. You show the slightest light, there'd be some airway warden shouting at you about, put that light out, put that light out, you know. But it was quite a famous saying. Before long, people used to say it as a joke sort of thing, put that light out. But I realise now what a difficult job they had, keeping people under control. And also, of course, there were some very brave air raid warders. Went into bomb buildings, didn't know if it was going to fall down on top of anybody to see if there's any survivors inside. And a chap I knew in the Air Force, well, in the prison camp actually, he was in the police, but he was allowed to go into aircrew, but nothing else to do with the armed forces, only aircrew. And he went in as an observer. But he didn't tell anybody about it, but I learned it from somewhere else. But he got a George Medal for going into a bomb building and getting 4 women out or something. And he really earned this George Medal. But he would never talk about it very much, you know. We saw 2 fighter planes, German, and I think they both shot each other down or something, which was not unusual, you know. But the pilot of one of them landed on top of somebody's greenhouse in their garden. It could have smashed that right up. There we were sitting down. He said the first thing he knew, really, to say, was a boy coming out of the house. He got a packet of cigarettes and some matches, offering him a smoke. And that was a bit funny, you know. I think he was glad of the smoke, because in those days, of course, 95% of men smoked and 50% of women smoked. So it wasn't any unusual thing, you know. Well, the wireless operator in those days was, we were trained to do 2 jobs really. One, the first part of the course was entirely as a ground-based wireless operator. And then you were sent out to get a bit of experience of that. And then you went back for the air operating course, which was the first time I'd ever flown in my life. And the first time I'd ever had earphones on and there was no sound coming from it at all. So I did badly. I knew I did badly because I couldn't hear anything, And when I got back, I was before the CO saying, you know, you have to do better than this, you know. But the next time I flew, I could hear what I was sending, and it was quite all right. But I never ever mentioned that of these training aircraft called Dominies. They were a civilian plane taken over by the Air Ministry to train wireless operators. I think there was 5 pupils and the instructor. But then that's the first stage, and then the second stage is on, I forget what these little aircraft were called, but you were on your own. And we had, I think they were fighter pilots on rest. from their squadron. And they come back, and it was not far from here, over the River Wye. But they took these little aircraft right down, about 6 feet above the water. But that was no good to us because we were carrying what we call a trailing aerial. And that was flowing at the back of the aircraft, and that was actually dipping in the water, so I couldn't get any signals at all. So we got back to the station, and it's more than you dare do to criticise any of these pilots, because they're all ex-fighter pilots, and my goodness, you'll get a rough ride next time if you but luckily there were 2 Indian pilots there. Oh, they were real gentlemen, and they, if you could get flying with them, you're in clover. And they, after the flight, they'd come around and say, "How did you do? How did you get on?" and all that, you know. But they were real gentlemen. They were. But anyway, you go from that second part, you go to, I'm trying to get the stages of the training.
So don't worry too much about the individual training bases. If you could do us a favor, tell us the story of how you get assigned to your squadron, your fighting squadron.
Anyway, the next stage of the thing, you go to what you call operational training unit, and this is where you meet up with the crew. And the strange thing was, they left this entirely to us to form ourselves into a crew. Nobody said anything, recommended anything. We were just expected to, and which we did, form the crew. And I got my eye on this man. He was a little bit older than other people. I thought, he looks a steady type. And I kind of know. He wanted the wireless operator. Yes, come in. And he'd already got a navigator and a bomb aimer. And they were, the bomb aimer was Canadian. Yeah, that's it. But then he had to go sick for some reason or other, and they wouldn't let us wait. They said, "You'll have to choose another bomb aimer." So we did that, and off we go, and we start, first of all, on what they call circuits and bumps. And there's not a lot for the wireless operator to do in that. It's really pilot training, but you're all in the crew now, you're with a crew, the navigator and bomb aimers. And that's how you start off being a crew. And we start off doing what they call circuits and bumps. That's just taking off a couple of circuits the airfield and down again. And we as the people except the pilot, he was glad of the training, you see, but we were bored stiff with this. Anyway, you would go from to start to think about 4-engine bombers. So your next step is onto a training to fly 4-engine bombers. And that was much more interesting because they were the operational aircraft of the day. And I didn't do too long of that, about 3 or 4 weeks, and that, getting used to them. It was mainly for the pilots' use, you know, more than he could do with the training on these 4-engine bombers. And also, of course, we took on a flight engineer then, which brought the crew up to 6, and then also a mid-upper gunner, which brought the crew up to 7. So we had to learn to work as a crew watch out for any aircraft all around our aircraft. And then from there, when you're thoroughly used to flying these 4-engine bombers, you're posted then to a squadron. And we actually went to another group because they're supposed to be very short of the crews or something. So anyway, it was quite, we didn't mind that. Went further up in Lincolnshire to join this other squadron, 166. And the man in charge, the CO of that, was a Canadian, and he was very good. And so we were considering ourselves, well, we were ready to go off on ops then. And normally, what they do on the squadron is to send the pilot off as a second pilot to an experienced crew. But we didn't get that chance at all. We went straight off as a crew, and we got pretty well shot up a time or two on this first stop. And then on the second stop we went on, we were really shot up then, and we lost one of the propellers. And but the pilot managed to get it back all right, get it back to London. And we thought then, and we haven't got an aircraft now, what do we do? And we were just thinking about going off into the cinema or something like that. And when our flight commander, to him waving there to us, he came over and said, the old man says, you've got to take our aircraft, and we're not going tonight, you're going instead. And he suddenly said, look, caught hold of the pilot, he said, mind what you're doing with it, it's a brand new one. But that was the last they saw of it, of course, because on that trip we got shot down. Yes, part of the training to go off on some sort of an operation. And I think normally, I think most of the unit did go on dropping leaflets over France. But we, and 2 other aircraft, we were sent off to try to locate a pilot who was thought to be down off the coast of Norway, and they were sitting in the dinghy. So us 3 aircraft went off, and we only up about 1,000 feet, and we were watching out for enemy aircraft all the time, pouncing down. But of course, Norway, of course, was in the hands of the Germans, and also had all the airfields. So we had to keep a sharp lookout for German. And they said, before we left at the briefing, they said, now, if you do get attacked, the best thing you can do is dive for the sea. At least they can't get underneath you then. The German fighters can't get underneath you. So we did that. We didn't see any German fighters, but one of the pilots, and he said, I dive for the sea. And I got down there, I thought, I can't handle this aircraft down there. He said, I'm safe for going up again. And they saw this aircraft, still saw it, but it didn't take any notice of them at all. The German, I forget the name of it now, but they saw it there, and they were sure that he saw them, but he didn't attack them. So we went off back to base then, but it was probably the longest air trip I've ever done, I think. About 8 hours, I was thinking, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
If you could go ahead and take us through the first mission. What was going on in your head? The briefing, I think the target was Berlin,
yeah.
Right? And then talk about, I think your unit, they had been doing like 30 odd missions to Berlin every day,
yeah.
Or every night. So, but take us through your first mission, Mr. Martin. What was going on in your head?
Well, I think you're a bit well, you think, well, it's not going to happen to us, you know. We think it's not going to happen to us. We're not going to get shot down, no. But when we got down over near the target, we had different ideas. When we could see German fighters swiveling down and seeing other aircraft going down. There's nothing, you see nothing in the sky, then suddenly have a huge fire, and then you see it, one of our bombers going down. You know, the fighters have got on its tail, and so we weren't so cocksure then. We were very wary of what we were doing, but this fighter got us on our third trip. Well, as you know, on our second operation, we were so badly shot up when we got back. It wouldn't we couldn't think of going that one again. There was too much work to be done on it. And so it appeared we wouldn't have an aircraft to fly in. But then we saw this man coming across, and it was our flight commander. And he says, the old man says, you've got to take our aircraft on this op. We're not going, but he said, don't bend it, don't scratch it. He said, it's a brand new one. So we thought, oh, well, that's it then, we're going. So off we went, and we didn't, actually on the route it was easier than, as regards flak and fighters, than the other two that we'd done. And we thought it was quite quiet, because what we were going to have a long sea crossing and come in from the north onto Berlin, which we were hoping that they wouldn't be expecting. So anyway, off we go, so we got there all right, and we didn't have many problems, I don't think, getting there. But in fact, we thought we'd missed the target. But then suddenly, whoosh, a great stream of anti-aircraft shells came up, and we knew we were over the target then. And we thought, seeing it from the distance, we're never going to get through this, you know. But actually, well, we didn't get through it, but they'd put, the Germans had put fighters in the stream, and we were shot down by a fighter, not flak at all. And we didn't know what had happened, really. We couldn't figure out. It took a long time afterwards to piece together what had happened, that this fighter had come up on our tail and done considerable damage, and the pilot had ordered us to bail out because he knew the aircraft was not manageable, and reached down and put our chutes on. And it was only, I think I've said this before, but it's only the pilot. He's sitting on his parachute, but our parachute pack is stored in a place where we know to get it. So we clipped that on all right, but as I went past the navigator, I could see that he'd been fairly badly hit somehow. There's a lot of blood about. Well, I couldn't imagine what it was. I thought it was oil. But when I got down, I realised it was all over me, the blood, you know. And anyway, I thought it was going to go down with the aircraft, and I was standing at the side of the engineer, and he was thinking the same as I was. He told me afterwards that we weren't going to get away with it, no. then suddenly the whole lot blew up. And there I was. I think we were about 20,000 feet when we were hit. But by the time my parachute opened, it'd be little more than 1,000 feet. And we dropped all that way. And I think the engineer found the same situation, really. He thought we were getting ready to crash into the ground, and suddenly the aircraft blew apart and blew us out. And I was looking, didn't have much chance to see where I was going to land or anything. I just had to go where the parachute took me. And luckily, I landed in a field, a small field. And but I had a terrible job to get rid of my harness because there was a slight wind blowing and it was dragging me along. The parachute still fully blown up, was pulling me along. And then I was so fogged up with what I'd experienced in the plane blowing up, and I just couldn't think what we're supposed to do. But luckily, it all came to me. You got to get hold of the strings and pull them down to make the parachute canopy collapse onto the ground. And I thought, thank goodness for that. And I was quite content to lay there for quite a while because I didn't have the strength to get up. No? But anyway, I thought, well, if I'm going to get out of this, about time I did something about it. And I stood up and I managed to get rid of the harness to the parachute. And I thought, I've got to hide this thing somewhere so they don't know where I've landed. So I saw either a haystack or something in the stack, might have been barley or whatever. So I thought, oh, that's what I'll do. I'll push it into there. And I pushed and pushed on the chute until it was quite invisible outside. So then I thought, right, I've got to get as far away as possible from the scene, because there'll be all the debris from the crashed aircraft. They'll know where that I'm there. So I walked for a bit in open countryside, just a bit, and then I saw what I knew was a road somehow. I thought perhaps there'd be a signpost on there to tell me where I am, which way I'm going. And I just went to step out onto the road, and there are these two Germans with fixed bayonets and rifles telling me to stop, halt, you know. I thought, good Lord, you know, they're going to take me. But they took me across the road into this big hut place, and they were quite civilised, these chaps that picked me up, and just pushed us into the room. And I knew I was safe then, but they straight away sent for a medical orderly, and he came out and he did a lot of work on me, mending gashes in my legs, and he kept throwing it into my legs. And it was years later before I realised what he was doing. He thought I'd got flak in there, anti-aircraft shells bursting, and that's what he was looking for. And he was probing about to see if he could. No, he satisfied himself that there was nothing in there, and then he bandaged it all up, and he went off, and these other blokes in the hut, they said, right, well, in a few minutes you're going to be picked up and taken to headquarters. And it wasn't long before this car came and picked me up and drove me off to what was obviously their headquarters. And they took me upstairs where there was a man who was obviously a sergeant who was going to be on duty all night. And I saw he was who had got my, well, I don't know how I knew. I guessed it was my parachute he'd got. And he threw this at me and said, put it down there and get down, you know. Made me realise what I've got to do, you know. And that was just in front of the desk, so he could keep an eye on me. And I think I either went unconscious or I might have got a bit of sleep, I don't know. But next morning, they come and fetched me and I was taken to the hut where the searchlight crews lived. And they were very interested in me. And it was surprising how many of them could speak a bit of English. And one had actually been playing football in Wembley Stadium, which was only a couple of miles from where I lived. And they were always very kind. I thought, I don't think I would have been so kind. But anyway, they said you're going to be taken away shortly to headquarters. And it wasn't long, just as they said, they're taken out to the front of the building and there was this longest Mercedes car I'd ever seen, and the poshest one. And inside was two Luftwaffe officers. And they got us inside there, and one of them took out his pistol, and he nursed that for the whole of the journey to Tempelhof airfield in Berlin. And there we were put in a cell, and we were given a little bit of food, I think. And then we said we were going to be taken away then to Tempelhof, which is their place where they interrogated people. And we went on the train, and these guards that were with us said, now, don't talk, because this crowd will realise who you are, that you're English and that, and there'll be trouble. So keep quiet, don't say a word, you know. And it was amazing how many of them could speak English, you know. So that's what we did. We did what we were told and kept there. And we arrived at the station where we were going to. And there's a lot of civilians on the platform, and they realised who we were. And they came surging towards us. There was no chance of what they were going to do to us, you know. Anyway, this man, the sergeant in charge, he knew what to do, thank goodness, and he pushed us all against the wall and formed a semicircle with his soldiers and said, if you come a step forward, we're going to start shooting, you know. But was I glad of that man? I never thought I'd be so glad of a German. And he really knew what he was doing. And then after a while, we were taken out of the station and to a tram car. There was nobody else in the tram, so they must have brought the tram down specially to take us. So we got on this tram, and it was I said Tempelhof, the name of the place. But no, anyway, I'll think of the name. We were in this tram, and the damage that we saw even frightened us. bomb damage. And the Americans have been over there several times. And the way they carry out their bombing is that the leader of the squadron opens his bomb doors, and they all open their bomb doors, and then when they see the leader's bomb go, they drop theirs. So that's why there's such a wide area. It's just destroys, it would destroy a big village easily. But we didn't appreciate that very much. But we're very glad to get out of that situation into the Templehof aerodrome. That's where we went to. And we were put in cells there. And we were given a little bit of food, I think. And then said, made it clear that we were going to be taken off to the interrogation centre. And it was only the next day we were taken off, started off. It didn't wait long, taking us off there. And the first thing we knew about it being we would arrive was there was a lot of panes of glass in the front of this building, and one of them had been obviously deliberately broken, and the hole stuffed up with what we call window, which was what we used to drop to try to foil the German radar. And we all know what we were looking at. And they didn't make much fuss of that at all, but took us into a place, and we were shown into a room where there was four Germans, and they stripped us right down, all our clothing off and all that, and they were looking to find, they knew exactly, telling us, showing me, I was on my own then, being interrogated, and they made it a great show of looking in my battle dress belt to see something we had to take some German money and some maps in there. And what they wanted to do was show us that they knew everything about us. No good time to tell us anything else. Anyway, I got that, and then they were looking all over me and they were only young people, very arrogant. And then they said, right, you're going off now. And the door opened, and two guards came with fixed bayonets and took me off to a cell. And that's where I started my life in Templehof. And but I was in there probably only a day before I was called before one of the interpreters. And he could speak English better than I could, you know, no doubt about that. And he was saying what he wanted to know, you know. And he said, I'm only trying to prove that you're an English airman and you're not a spy. But we'd had a lot of briefing about what they were going to ask us from our intelligence. So I knew it was very valuable training that was given, knowing what they were looking for. And they were saying about, they knew exactly where we were going and all that. And suddenly they asked me something, and I thought, well, if you're that clever, you should know that, you know. So I was quite pleased to do that. But anyway, they didn't go into it, and then I was back in the cell.
What happened to your identity discs? Your identity discs?
Oh, yeah. Before we took off for the raid, we went to the briefing, and where they do the briefing, there's some decent wash places, hot and cold water, which you don't get anywhere else on the wartime airfield. And I took the advantage of having a good wash there, and I hung my identity disc up on a hook, came away and forgot them. So by the time I got out of there, it's too late to tell anybody or anything. Well, I didn't know I'd left them there till some time after. I thought, oh, Lord. But we were in the aircraft then, and I thought, well, it's no good trying to do anything about it. No point in telling anybody, they can't do anything. And so there I was in the middle of Germany with no identity. And they said, he made out he knew all about it, you know, that we know you're nothing, you haven't got any identity discs, you know. And you mustn't tell them too much. So I said, I left them in the wash place before I came, you know. And he sort of laughed and said, we know all about that, you know. And they sent back to the cell, and I was called out probably once a day, sometimes twice a day, to be interrogated by these German officers. And one of the people I met was a wireless specialist, you know. And but I must tell you this bit, that just before we were shot down, all wireless operators were summoned to the headquarters on the squadron, and there we were given a demonstration of a new piece of equipment. And it was telling us when there was any other aircraft in the vicinity, and not only where they were, but not only that there were other aircraft about, but exactly where they were. And we thought a marvellous bit of kit. And they said, this squadron is due to be fitted with these within 2 weeks. But of course we weren't there to see it. But no doubt they were, you know, a great invention. And you could see why they didn't want us telling anybody about them at all. Even other members of the crew, we didn't want them telling us that we got them. And but as I say, they hadn't started fitting them into the aircraft then, so we didn't need it, didn't want it. And the line that one of these interrogators took, that I wasn't a British airman at all. I was a spy, and I'd been brought specially to drop over Berlin. But of course I couldn't, you can't say too much back because that's what they want you to do, give them answers to, so they can analyse it. So we were always told by our intelligence, all you want to do is your name, number and rank, and that's all you've got to think about. That's all you're obliged by international law. And so that was a good thing, really. Right. I realised sometime afterwards that if I'd have been sitting in my position – instead of looking out through the Astrodome, I would have been right in the path of these shells that had been thrown at it. And, but I just got back into my seat, and all these shells come flying past my arm. I didn't realise, it didn't occur to me for some days that how lucky I was to have moved, else I would have been cut to pieces with these cannon shells. I was looking out the Astrodome, and I was suddenly remembered time to get the group broadcast, which is vitally important, because if there's any alteration in plans, that's where you'll learn it, and you'll have to tell the pilot about it. So anyway, I got down from where I was looking out for night fighters to get in my seat when these cannon shells come flying by my shoulder. I thought, well, to tell you the truth, I didn't think too much about it at the time, but a day or two later I was thinking about it and thinking, goodness me, I could have been cut to pieces with those shells. Because the German night fighters were much more heavily armed than our fighters. They were firing cannons rather than machine guns.
Perfect. And so once you sit down, what happens?
When I sat down, the shells were flying. These shells, there must have been some sort of, what do they call them?
The 20 millimeter.
Yeah, they were. Anyway, they were flying past my gun. I thought if I'd have stopped in that, under that Astrodome, I would have been right in the path of those shells.
And so you get back to your seat.
I got back to my seat, yes. And luckily I got back to my seat, and I was just tuning in the receiver to get the group broadcast when these shells come flying by. Yeah.
And then what did you hear?
Well, I didn't have time to hear anything really from the broadcast. I was just getting tuned into it, because other times you're moving the receiver to try to pick up enemy aircraft, and you only expected, and about expected to, you've got jolly well got to be tuned in to get this broadcast, let's call it. I went. Knew that the aircraft had been badly hit, and I managed to get my parachute on, and but the whole of the gangway was on fire then, so I didn't go down there. So I thought, I'll have to wait until I'm blown out of the aircraft. Which I was actually, but not at that point, yeah. But I did go forward a bit and met up with the bomb aimer, and we were standing side by side. I expect we both knew we were about to die, or thought we were about to die, and then suddenly the whole aircraft blew up. And there I was, and I don't know how far I'd fallen before I opened my parachute, but by the time I became conscious, it was no more than 1,000 feet.
But how did your parachute open? Didn't some of the wreckage of the plane pull your parachute ripcord?
Yes, the parachute. Just a minute, one moment, where have we got to?
So after the explosion, you blacked out, and my understanding is that it was some of the wreckage of the plane that opened your parachute.
Oh, yes, yeah. I don't know, I don't remember pulling the chute at all, but I thought that perhaps it had got snagged onto something. It could well have done, and because I don't remember pulling the parachute opening, but I must have done unconsciously. Yeah.
Can you describe, please, where is it when you went out and you saw the fire in the door?
In the cockpit.
Well,
with the rest of the crew.
Because you were going to try to jump out, but then because of the fire, you had to go a different way.
Yes, yeah.
So where was that fire?
The fire was in the main cockpit, I think, yes. And I couldn't see I was going to get out in any way, except suddenly it blew up. I found myself going through the air, and then I managed somehow to pull the parachute. I had enough sense, although I was mainly unconscious, I had enough sense to pull the chute, and probably no more than less than 1,000 feet, probably. After we were hit and the plane was going down, and I thought, well, this is it. I'm just waiting. I wonder what it'll be like when we hit the ground, you know. But the aircraft blew up before we got to the ground. So, and also I don't know if I pulled the parachute or whether it got snagged on some of the wreckage but all I know is that, boom, my parachute had opened, and there I was swinging about. All the harness was ripped off of one side, and I was holding on with both hands onto the strap this side, and I was swinging about like this. And I thought how lucky I was to have been like that, in that position, you know. Well, I couldn't get by the pilot because that was all burning, and I think I could see the crew sort of lined up behind him, behind the pilot, looking for space to get out of. But if I'd have joined them, I would have been blown up with the aircraft, I would think.
So who all was killed from your? Who was killed from your crew?
Who was killed? Well, the pilot was killed, the navigator was killed, the bomb airman was killed, and the rear gunner was killed. And the survivors was the mid-upper gunner, the engineer, and me, the wireless operator. The pilot, Jimmy Tosh, I could see him, but I knew he wouldn't have got out because it was all in flames.
The bomb aimer, what was his name? The bomb aimer?
Bomb aimer, he was the same, yeah. No, he was with the pilot, I think, when he would come up out of the thing to open up the parachute exit. But how far he got with that, I think he would have been in line with the fire. The bomb aimer, Reg Morris, I think he would have been killed in the attack and wouldn't have had any thought of getting out.
And the rear gunner, what was his name?
I'll tell you in a minute. Dick Walton. He was the rear gunner, yeah. But didn't know what happened to him, but I assumed that he caught the main blast. The fighter that attacked us would be briefly got a fire at the rear gunner to put him out of action first, and he would have been badly shot up, I should think, at the best.
The men who were killed, the 4 men, is there anything about their personalities or where they're from or anything that you can tell us about them?
Yeah, the navigator was a Scotsman, and the pilot was a Scotsman, but he'd come down to London and join the Metropolitan Police. The bomb aimer was a ventilating engineer, and the flight engineer, he was an engineer in civilian life.
And the rear gunner?
Rear gunner, I forget what he was, I can't think what he did.
I know that you did not know them a very long time, but is there any story, anything that you want to mention about their personalities, any times that you guys went out together?
Yeah. Just trying to think what the rear gunner did. He had a proper job, I know. He had a good job, I know, but I can't think what it was he was doing. But the navigator say he was an accountant. The pilot was a policeman. I was a sheet metal worker. And who else was there? The navigator, the mid-upper gunner. He was an engineer, I've said that I think already. And the bomb aimer was a heating engineer, he was, yes. He was a heating engineer. And I'd only been married a few weeks.
Who was this?
The bomb aimer. The bomb aimer had just been married about 6 weeks when he was killed.
Do you remember going out with any of the guys from your crew? Were you close to any of them?
This is after the war.
No, before your...
No, I didn't go to any of the houses, no. We all went out different, when we went on leave, we all went in different directions.
So you weren't buddies with any of them? You were not close buddies with anyone?
No. I wasn't. No, I was very much in love, if you call it, with my wife then. I knew my wife, yeah.
That's a really important story. Before we get to your time as a prisoner, can you go ahead and tell us the story of how you met Mrs. Martin?
Yeah. Yes, when we'd been in operational training unit, a week or two, I heard that there was a dance in the village hall of a neighbouring village. So I went off and walked there, and the first girl I set eyes on was going to be my future wife. And I was very taken with her, and I had a bit of a dance with her, as much as I wasn't a very accomplished dancer, but we had a bit of a dance together. And then it comes to going home, and I walked there, and she had borrowed a bicycle to get there. And so I sat on the saddle of the bicycle and did the pedalling, and my future wife sat on the crossbar of the bike. And I got home then we got the bicycle to her home where it belonged. So then I had to walk back to the airfield, and I got lost on the way. And but I could see in the distance the flashing identity lights of the airfield. I thought, oh, I'll get down there, they'll be able to help me. I got down there and I couldn't find anybody awake, and they were all supposed to be on duty. So I thought it's no good hanging about here, so I did get back eventually, but about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I never reported the fact that these blokes were there asleep, you know. I didn't think that would do me any good, anyway.
Can you go ahead and tell us your wife, her name?
Elsie Adelaide, yeah. Adelaide. Adelaide, she was always named by the name Adelaide, but her full name was Elsie Adelaide Jarman.
What?
Jarman, yeah.
And tell us your favorite things about her.
Sorry?
Your favorite things about her.
Yes. Well, I really fancied her and thought, I'd like to see you again, and made arrangements to see her at the next dance, which is another, but luckily, no, I couldn't get there because another crew, their wireless operator, was gone into sick bay, so they didn't have a wireless operator. So the commander said, you'll have to go with them. You'll go with them, because you mustn't fly without a wireless operator. So I thought, oh no, this is bad. But I suddenly remembered my crew, they weren't going anywhere, because it's only me that was there. So one of them went to the dance and told her what had happened to me. I'd had to fly with another crew. So that's how we kept in touch.
And how did you end up proposing? How did you end up proposing?
Well, it just sort of came along. I don't know.
Was this after the war?
Yes. I don't remember formally saying, "Will you marry me?" I took it for granted that she wanted to marry a handsome bloke like me. Yes, I don't think there was any formalities in our getting engaged, but we had a ring. Yes. But that wasn't easy. We had to buy second-hand rings then, because there wasn't any new ones available because of the shortage of gold, you see, and the country couldn't afford to buy any gold. So we had to buy second-hand rings. It so happened that my wife, as I told you, was on this, also in the Air Force, and she had previously met a man called Wally Jarvis, and he was one of the entries at Operational Training Unit. And I'd already got to know him, and I quite liked him. But I didn't tell him anything about this girl I'd met. But my wife told me that she'd, I don't know if she told me or not, but she told her mother what she'd done. And she said, you look after whoever comes first, I'll go out with them. And I got out first. I got there first. And poor old Wally Jarvis, well, he didn't do too bad. He got a good night out at the pub with Adelaide's father. And we learned all this later, you see, because I was still in training with him, not in his crew, but in the training. He was the captain of another aircraft, you see. So, no, there wasn't any hard feelings about it. We kept in touch, and we went off to the next stage of the training. We were off together, and I was talking to him, and we were quite matey, you know.
So you were in the prison camp. But you were in the prison camp, but Wally Jarvis wasn't.
Wally Jarvis went to the pub with Adelaide's father.
Yeah. But then later you learned that Wally Jarvis was also a prisoner. Was that right?
That Wally Jarvis was
also a prisoner. Did Wally Jarvis become a prisoner?
I can't remember that.
Did Wally Jarvis become a prisoner of war?
Yes, he was. Wally Jarvis was taken. Yes, and he got badly burnt around the face and head. Yeah.
So
the bit of the story I was trying to
yeah,
get
no, I appreciate it. No, it's interesting.
I think Wally Jarvis was also keen on my mum.
Of course.
And my dad got made prisoner of war, and he went, Wally Jarvis is still around. But then he learned that Wally Jarvis was also in the prisoner of war. He said it was the best bit of news I've ever heard.
Now, he learned this when he was a prisoner?
Yeah.
Did they meet up?
I don't think so. I think he just got to hear on the grapevine that Wally Jarvis was also in a prison. He thought, that's good. Did you nothing to worry about.
Did you guys ever meet him after the war, Mr. Jarvis?
No, I don't know what happened to him after the war.
I'm sure he has a very different version of the story, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for that, because that was important. It's good that we...
About being a POW, yeah. Yes, as I say, we went to the, first of all, you go to the interrogation centre, which is especially laid out, and then you go from there into a prison camp. And I found it, well, compared with what I'd been through, I suppose, the crashed aircraft and the interrogation centre, I thought it wasn't too bad at all, really. And I soon got to know people there. And but I knew Wally Jarvis was a prisoner of war, but I never ever bumped into him. I never went to the same camp as him. Stalag Luft 6 was my first prisoner of war camp.
And what were the conditions like?
Well, to be honest, you couldn't grumble too much. I mean, we were prisoners of the Germans, but food was very scarce, and all we had was the bread. We had 1/7 of a normal loaf that you'd find in England, but it contained all sorts of things, including wood. And they admitted this, and we had 1/7 of that. Well, imagine the job of cutting that up before a ring of hungry people, and this bloke trying to cut this loaf into 7 equal parts. And I think the more I think back on him, I think how marvellous he was doing it. But he was in the grocery trade, I think, so perhaps he should have done.
Did you have to go on any work details?
No, NCOs don't go on any work. Officers and NCOs do not go on any work in German programs. Didn't go on any work in German prison camps. But we did go out once, but we had to volunteer to this, to go out into a forest where they'd felled some trees and they left some scraps of wood about where we could collect them and bring them back and put them in our stoves, which we didn't have any. We had stoves in the hut, but we never had any fuel to put in them. And in fact, I can remember, it wasn't 2 years later that I really tumbled about it. The Swiss used to come and inspect the prison camp, or supposedly did, but don't forget they were very friendly with the Germans, and it paid them to be friendly with the Germans, didn't it? Because they were neighbours. And anyway, they came on a visit via the Red Cross, and the side of the hut, the great long wall, they said there should be a fire against this wall, it's too cold. Yes, they put a fire there. They didn't put any chimney or anything to burn in the fire at all. Yes, the Germans put the fire there. Very clever.
Could you please tell us how did you all occupy yourselves? If you were not going on work details, what did you do all day?
Well, there were a few books about. Talking was the main thing. Talking to each other. And, well, when you come to, but you mustn't let it get you down. That's the thing. It's important to have a hobby of some sort. And I say you could read, but it could get you down. There's no doubt about that. And some people, they said, were going crazy, you know.
Were there any escape attempts made when you were a prisoner?
Any what?
Escape attempts?
Escapers. Yes, yes. And there were, the first camp I was at, Luft 6, there was 2 chaps tried to get out, but they were shot on top of the wire from very close range. And then...
you saw that?
Hmm?
You saw that?
Oh, I didn't see, no, because they went at night, you see, and we were locked in the huts at night. But we heard the shots, we knew there was something going on. And as I say, they killed 2 then, and they killed 2 more in the last camp I was at.
What happened there?
They were trying to get out, and but somebody said who knew, claimed to know a lot about it, that they were definitely inside the wire when they were shot dead. Whereas according to the rules and regulations, they shouldn't have been. They should have been taken prisoner again.
Did you have any ideas of trying to escape? Did you want to make an effort?
Oh yes, we kept thinking about escaping, yeah. And in fact, we got this plot going out from the very same place as these 2 that got shot. The 2 that got shot were shot in the exact place where we were deciding that this is be a good place to escape. But then, when the next escape was when they were emptying the camp, and we got into a hut. As they moved our group along, we made sure we were on the end of the group, and we also noted that they left the doors of the huts open when they left. They didn't lock them up again, and we scooted into the empty huts. Underneath the beds, which only stood about that high off the ground. The first, there was 3 in a plonk, you see, and the bottom one was only about that far, 15 inches off the ground. But we got under there and hid ourselves in there until we were pretty sure that the camp was empty, and then we went out and had a look round. Yes, when I was in the prison camp, of course, the Germans were constantly looking for any means of escape or tunnels. And we knew this, of course, because we've been told a lot by our own intelligence. And there was two attempts, I think, at tunnelling. But one of them, when I was there, was during my time in the first stalag, we were moved from one compound to another. The compound is a part of the camp, see? And I went into this K6 where there's plenty of other prisoners well established there. And what I didn't know about, and which they didn't intend to tell me because they couldn't even be sure who I was going into this channel. So the first I knew about it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and the Germans arrived in strength with the Gestapo with them as well. and they'd obviously had the tip off about this tunnel, and we all got out of the huts in whatever we were sleeping in. Luckily, the weather was a bit warmer then. We all held out there, while they searched the hut, and then we all sort of dismissed, and I was looking in a hut where the Germans had their equipment, the ones who came to and I say obviously they knew about this tunnel, and it was where the toilet, the night toilet storage was kept. And by the time I got a look in there, they'd moved the tank away that we used to use as a night toilet, and underneath the toilet you could see where the tunnel, where the paving slabs had been moved. And even then I knew, even though I was a new prisoner, I knew that this was the entrance to a tunnel. And the Gestapo were there in Great Britain, and I went and fetched Jock, our hut leader, where we lived, our hut leader, and he put on a wonderful performance, because first thing I said to him was, "What is this? What is the meaning of this?" And they knew jolly well what it was, of course. Got him talking. And Jock stands there and scratches his head a couple of times. I said, "Good Lord, rats! Rats, rats, rats! You think we are stupid? You think we are stupid?" And that's how it went. But obviously we always think that these Gestapo people, they're a bit dim in some ways, you know. And they really took the story in that they thought it was rats, you know. I mean, I think they knew it wasn't rats, but it was going around in their heads, you know. Anyway, they took them out, and Jock was taken off to the cooler. That's the prison, the camp prison, and we were all dismissed then. But it was all carried out very funnily, with humour, I thought. Not from the Germans. They don't say anything funny in any time. They don't tell jokes and that sort of thing. It was the British who were telling the jokes about it. And, yeah. There was an outbreak of, I don't know what they were, but...
lice?
Yes. Oh, well, there's always lice, I think. But this was some other vermin. And I don't think they ever gave it a name. But it was there all right. And the Germans came and looked at it, and I think they did give some treatment for it.
How much did you weigh when you were first shot down, and how much did you weigh after your experiences as a prisoner?
Yeah, well, when I was first shot down, I was about 12 stone, I should think. And I think I was about 9 stone when I come out of the prison camp. But we'd had a good feed since, you know, being liberated. They gave us plenty of food, but we wasn't weighed until we got back to England. So.
What was the most difficult part about being a prisoner of war, and how long were you a prisoner?
the most important thing, the thing we used to think about is, will they bring in the Gestapo? And one day they discovered that there were 2 prisoners missing, and they brought in what they call it, the not Gestapo, military police thing. And don't kill that, will you? We keep them. And
SS, the SS.
SS, yes. We always knew about them, you know, but...
So 2 prisoners were missing. Could you continue that story, please?
About the 2 prisoners were missing.
So the is that how you know the story? SS.
Well, I'm guessing what he's saying. The military police was the SS, wasn't it?
The
No,
2,
that was an elite. I thought it was the Gestapo. Was the military police?
Well, I'm getting a history on that.
So, was it the Gestapo that came?
the Gestapo came in the first place, but they brought in I don't know what they'd be, a company of...
SS?
No, they weren't SS, but they were some special regiment. And they brought with them little tiny machine guns. I think they were called Spandaus. And they set them down on the ground, and obviously, if they hadn't have been told who these 2 prisoners who were missing, who they were, they would have used them, no doubt about that. But I was a bit scared then.
What happened?
Well, the camp leader told them the name of the people who had escaped, you see, and they dismissed us all then.
Your interactions, what did you talk to the German guards about?
What did we think about them?
No, what did you, yes, but what did you talk to them about?
Oh, well, we always tried to get some information from outside, you see. But obviously they'd been warned about talking to prisoners, and they would only talk to you when they were... This is the ordinary German guard, would only talk to you when he knew there was nobody about, you know. And I think they were quite all right. And I mean, they were only... we were enemies, you know, but they can't say the ordinary guards, I don't think anybody could say that they were really cruel to us.
And you never saw the Gestapo or anyone attacking any of the prisoners?
No, I can't, to be honest, I can't say I know, but I've been told about it, you know, but to be honest, I never really witnessed any.
What do you remember about the German dogs?
Dogs? Oh, they were very fierce animals. They were like Alsatian type. And when they came around at night, they'd always got a dog on a lead, which they could easily unclip, you know. And we wouldn't take any risks with them.
What did you have to do every day as a prisoner? Didn't you have to get counted in the morning?
Well, we had 2 roll calls a day. You had to come out your hut and form up in huts outside, form up in huts, and the Germans would come along and count you. And then they'd get their heads together and see if the figures total, and that was it then. But,
and so after the roll call, what did you personally, Mr. Martin, how did you spend most of your days?
Well, reading and talking. And you come to, when you mention it, I can't think what we did do, because it wasn't anything very exciting. But we had what we call our own intelligence people, and they were continually warning us against talking, I think, and the Germans also had a sort of a police force going about, doesn't? And we always warned about them, you know.
Could you mention that, please?
Yes, well, we knew them to be spies, thank goodness, and we could always recognise them. And we always knew to keep our trap shut when they were about, keep not speaking about anything important.
Were they German or British?
Germans, yeah, Germans. But
how could you tell?
well, they had a uniform, they did, but I think there were people in where we were first taken to be interrogated. There were people there who were wearing their RAF uniform, but they've already gone over to the Germans, and we were warned about those, of course, by our intelligence.
Could you please tell us the story? How did you get from the first POW camp to the second one?
On the rail, always on the rail, we marched down to the station, and
But why did they even move you?
well, to suit approaching Russians and approaching Britons. I don't think we ever came in the path of the Americans. They were operating in France more. But see, we had a very... Don't ask me anything about it, because we weren't allowed to talk about it, and we were always had it drummed into us. But they had a good idea of what was going on in every country, I think, that the Germans had occupied. They didn't know much about their military movements, but more on the Gestapo, the police side. Yeah.
So what was the second camp called?
Well, we were released by the British soldiers when we were at Fallingbostel. But they had taken a lot of prisoners out on the march. The Germans had done this, and they'll say we hid in a hut while they were doing this. And but they gradually brought them back. So the camp was pretty well full again by the time we were liberated.
And tell us about the liberation, please.
Well, the liberation, the first thing we saw of any British movement was a tank. Came up near to the wire of the prison camp, and I don't know what he was looking for. I think I do. He was looking for this particular farmhouse, because he stopped the tank, and they fired a couple of rounds into this farmhouse and put it down to the ground nearly. So I think they suspect that we know that there was a tank in there, a German tank housed in there, a Tiger tank. But obviously they'd moved it by the time the British got there and blew it to pieces. But then that tank turned round and went, it didn't come to the camp, it turned round and went away. But a couple of days they were back again, you know.
And please continue with the story of your liberation.
Oh, we flew back in a Dakota. That's an American aircraft. And but they did grand work during the war, the Dakotas, because they carried paratroops. They carried a lot of goods about, you know. So that's what we came back in. And we were going to come back the day before, I think, but no, I was saying it backwards. We didn't think we were going to get away on the first day that we got there. But later on in the day we heard, yes, you are going. One of the pilots, one of the crews of the Dakotas has volunteered to do another trip, Germany to Britain. which we were very grateful for. But like I say, when you're young, I mean, we should have made a terrific fuss of that crew that brought us back, but we didn't seem to. I think we're thinking more about ourselves getting home.
Could you please tell us the story of seeing your family for the first time?
Meeting the family. Well, by sheer luck, the family, they had already known that I was released because I'd written a couple of letters home, told them I was released. But also, I didn't know about, my mother and father had moved to a village somewhere in Bedfordshire, I think, to get away from the bombing. But I didn't know anything, but I knew that my sister, who lived not far away from where I used to live as a boy, I knew that she would always put me up for the night. I thought, that's where I'm going to. And when I got there was a big party going on. They had arranged this party to celebrate me getting released, not coming home. They didn't know I was coming home that day. I'd been home so quickly. But yes, we quite enjoyed all that.
What was their reaction when they saw you?
Sorry?
What was their reaction when they saw you?
Oh. Luckily enough, Anne, my girlfriend, as she was then before, she had been on leave, and she left home early so that she could call in and see my sister at this house. So she was there too.
And
unbelievable.
So you made it to the party to celebrate your release.
Yes.
And you were the guest of honor.
Yeah.
You were the guest of honor.
Oh, guest of honor, yeah. But they didn't expect me. They thought I was going to be next day or something like that, yeah.
Did you have any difficulties readjusting to civilian life?
Oh, yes, quite. But when we got up the plane, we were kitted out with RAF uniform and all that. But when I was on my way home, I felt very strange. Getting home, and I could remember the trains they wrote out all the timetables for me and gave me, so I didn't have that to worry about. But I found it pretty easy to get home. I was surprised how it all came back to me.
I meant more mentally. After the war, did you have nightmares or did noises bother you?
No, not. I can't, to be honest. I say no, but they thought I got TB when I come home, tuberculosis, And they took me after they gave me an appointment to go to this hospital. And they said no, luckily. They said you're not in a very good state, but you've not got tuberculosis. So I was very pleased to hear that. Yeah. But I always remember the doctor that I saw. She was the most kindly doctor I think I've ever known. She was Scottish. And she said, no, you're in a pretty bad state, but you haven't gotten to patting my head.
What life advice do you want to give to future generations?
What would I give to them? What would I say to them?
Yeah, life advice.
Yeah. Well, make sure you don't get caught up in any wars, because they're not anything to joke about or be wanting to get into them. You keep it far away from war as you can, because there's really no winners. There's no winners because it all has to be paid for when it's all over. So take my advice and don't support any war.
The world we live in is very different.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
But I'm saying the world today is very different than the world you grew up in. Is there anything you want to see future generations do to make you feel like the sacrifices you guys made were worth it?
Yeah, well, I'd like to see every country in the world realise what stupidity war is. Nobody gets away with it. Like I've just said a little while ago, it's all got to be paid for, even if not at the time, immediately after the war. I mean, I think if they told the truth, we've just about got over it now, the war.
Is there anything you want to say to the men in your crew who were killed? If you had the opportunity to talk to them, what would you want them to know?
What would I say to them? Well, you can't blame them because they had to do what they were told. But I would, like I say, steer away from war, because once you're in that military net, you have to do what you're told, and that's it.
What kind of man do you want people to always think of you as, Mr. Martin?
So think.
When people think of you, what are the characteristics you would like people that would come to their minds?
Oh, I'd like to think that they think I'm a peaceful man, and that like I say, I think all wars are stupid, and I think that people should realise that they are part of a community, and they've got to work together to do any good. And that's why I despise criminals so much. And, well, I'd like them to think I'm a peaceful bloke, and I've got more sense than to be in favour of wars. I realise the only reason that we've got troops and that, and an army and a navy and an air force, is because other people have got it. So therefore we've got to try to keep up with them, be ready for anything that might come along. The target was Berlin, but it had been Berlin for about a month before that. And everybody protested when they put up Berlin again, the map, as the target, because the losses were so bad. It was so heavy that you don't think of the flak over Berlin was so heavy that you just thought you'd never be able to get through it, because the first you see of it, you're coming up to it, and the sky is just full of bursting shells, and you think, well, we're never going to get through there, which we didn't on the third time. But then it was the fighter that got us, not the flak. But the flak was definitely in our minds, the most dangerous thing.
And do you remember the searchlights, the German searchlights, when you were flying at night? Wouldn't the searchlights lock in on you?
Well, we didn't. On that third night, we went a different way into Berlin.
The first two missions. On the first two missions,
yeah.
Do you remember the searchlights being an issue?
Well, we never got coned, if that's what you mean, yeah.
Yes, okay.
But we could see aircraft that had been coned, Well, they'd been brought down by flak, I think. We saw if any aircraft, any British aircraft was picked up by the cones and the flak, they wouldn't last long. They would be soon shot down, because not only was their flak there coming at them, but also any adjacent nearby fighters would see them as well.
when you're flying all of your missions at night, are you able to even see the fighters at night?
You'd see them when they got close enough, but the problem was that their gun range was far greater than ours, and they could sit back and pump you full of shells without coming in range with our machine guns. But later on in the war, they did get cannons in the British aircraft anyway. And the American daylight raids, well, they've got that many gunners on there. I don't think the German fighters dare come near them.
On the first 2 missions that you flew, do you remember anything specific that occurred that stands out?
Yeah. No, well, we didn't do or see much going in. And hopefully we dropped our bombs on the target and cleared off. And we didn't get engaged by fighters. We certainly got engaged by flak, I suppose, yes.
I believe on your first mission, didn't you take some damage?
Oh, yes, but it was only slightly, I think. It was only got a bit of flak, but they patched that up, I think. And we're back into service for the next raid. So there wasn't much wrong with it. But
so it was the second mission that the propeller was hit.
Yes, well, that was about the same. It was on the third mission when we got shot down. That's when we got down. But it wasn't fighters that got us, I'm sure, was it? I think the first camp was Heidekrug.
Okay.
Right? We knew the Russians were getting near to Heidekrug, and the evacuation from there was under great control of the Germans. They got it all sorted out very well, so we didn't have any chance to rebel against it. We moved to Poland, and the name of the place was Pollingbuster, yes, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, sir.
The destruction in Berlin when we were coming through there was most prominent, and I think the Americans were really the main inflictors of the damage on Berlin, because they used to come over as a block, and bomb as a block, and go away as a block. And the sense in this is they had very good guns in the American aircraft. What did it mean to me?
Yeah.
Well, I think stupidly in my youth I thought good, very good. But I wouldn't say that now, I don't think.
I appreciate the honesty.
I appreciate you having to keep repeating something.
It's been such an honor to meet you. God bless you, Mr. Martin.
God bless you for going to all this trouble of getting the story put together. Perhaps it will put a few off.
I really appreciate that. I really hope to stay in touch, okay?
Yes, okay, yeah.
A lot of people care about you, and you have an incredible mind.
Ah.
So we're going to stay in touch, and I want you to know you have given a lot of people an opportunity at a full and a free life because of what you went through in the war.
Yeah.
And that's something no one will ever take from you.
That's right.
And when you look outside and you see kids playing and you see that we live in a very peaceful country in the world, that's because of what you went through.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I really appreciate everything. It's been such an honor to meet you.
Oh, right.
And we'll stay in touch.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much.
What did you think of the interview? What did you think of the interview? What did you think of the interview?
What did I think of
the interview?
Me?
No, the interview.
Oh, yeah, very good.